first thing you have to decide when you're going to make a pair of socks is what you want to make them out of. This is 75% cotton and 25% nylon. This is a lovely wool. One strand is violet and the others are blue. Again, wool and nylon. Wool, nylon, cotton, and a little bit of elastic inside, so it makes it nice and stretchy. This is cotton, 90% cotton and elastic. This is a particular kind of sock yarn that my children really like. This is llama, very soft, and silk and wool. Almost all sock yarns contain at least a little bit of nylon in order to make sure that it doesn't deform during washing. In addition, you're going to want to use a sock weight of yarn, which would be fingering weight. That's the name of a sock weight yarn, is called fingering weight. You can use lace weight, which would be very, very fine socks, lots of stitches. And you can use DK or sport weight, which aren't so fine. The next thing you have to decide is how you're going to make your socks. What kind of knitting needles do you want to use? A lot of people really love these lovely cable needles. These are specifically sock needles, size 0. I have used these many, many times, but I don't particularly like to use cable needles because it seems like the sock yarn gets stretched out and it makes a floppier sock. This would be for a much larger sock, and you can use a long cable like this by twisting it to make a smaller set of needles. I don't like those, but you know now that they exist. Most people use a double pointed needle. There's a point on one end and on the other. These are metal, common German needles. These are ebony double pointed knitting needles. I prefer wood over metal because wood doesn't slip as much. The needles will slip off the end of the knitting needle, but they don't slip off until you pull it. And there you don't drop stitches and lose them. This is my actual set of sock knitting needles, different sizes available. If you're going to use double pointed needles, you must use at least 5 needles. You use 4 in the round and 1 to knit with. Socks are knitted, the socks that I'm going to show you are knitted from cuff to toe. Now you can knit them the other way, but I don't usually do that, and that's not what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you 2 kinds of socks. There's the body of the sock, the heel flap, the gusset, the foot, and the toe. Again, you can see it here. The body of the sock, a heel flap in dark gray, a gusset right here, and the foot. These make nice 90-degree socks. Again, this is in a little bit larger gauge, heavier sock. The body, the heel flap, the gusset, and the foot, and then the toe of the sock. These make beautiful 90-degree socks. Very, very form-fitting. This is actually a tube with a hole in it, and I add the heel later. As you can see, the heels will actually just stand right up if you line them up. This is a very common pattern in my household. My children particularly like this. I'll show you what the pattern is later. This one is a lace pattern. You can see the lace holes through my hand. If you put these kind of lacy patterns on here, it can make the sock a little bit more aerated and stretchy so that it goes around big feet. This is an unusual sock because it is a tube, but it is knitted this way. And I left a hole, and then I inserted a heel, and you can see that the knitting is actually this way. So these are the kinds of socks that I make. you would be able to, after watching these lessons, be able to make this kind of sock with the added in heel or this kind of sock with a heel gusset. I always draw a pattern so that I remember where I am and what I'm supposed to do. A pattern for socks, especially cuff to toe, is read upside down and backwards. So from 1 to 4 and from 1 to 8 up here. This particular pattern is called Welsh Pebble. It's the pattern that I use on a lot of the socks for my sons because they really like it. It forms these lovely sort of loopy things on the inside to make them very absorbent. A pattern like this is a lace pattern. This is not a pattern for that, actually. But it has a cable down the middle and it has a lace. It's actually called Gothic Arch because it's supposed to look like church arches, but because I do it upside down, it ends up sort of looking like arrowheads. These are the two patterns that you will see me knitting socks in. This sort of has the celery stalk and then a cable. And I always put a legend for what I'm going to do. But I don't do it on pieces of paper that large. I use a notebook. This happens to be the page for one of the socks I will be showing to you, this one. Again, it has that sort of celery stalk and then a cable down the middle. And the other sock is the Welsh Pebble, and there it is. You can see it without its toe yet and got a hole for the heel. I always mark when I do a full round so that I don't get lost in the pattern and that my socks turn out exactly the same each time, because you want two socks that fit the same way. So I make a pattern for each sock and then I just follow it. This is a needle gauge to make sure that the needles that you're using for your project are the correct size. I want 3.0, and as you can see, that fits through the 3.0. I have to check because the differences in size are so small. The difference between 2.75 and 3.0 is very fine. So I check the size of my needles each and every time I go to use them. That is not a 3.0, that's a 3.25, that's a mistake. And that is a 2.75, too small. That's also a mistake. And as you can see, they fit through nice and snugly. And now we have our needles. So now we're going to learn how to knit socks.